ladies and gentlemen, to G.A.M.E, the show that covers games, arts, movies, entertainment, and everything else. I'm your host, GQ. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite genres, fighting games. But as you can see, we're still here in witness protection because of, we're not going to name any names, but someone with the initials Megashawn has been pretty much, he's being chased by the feds right now, and also we got the Fandering on our tail, so we're not going to really worry about that. We'll be back to normal pretty soon. Also want to thank Culture Junkies for bringing us all of this great equipment through Megashawn and his underworld connections. But we also want to remind you, hit us up at gameshowchat@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Facebook. The information is right down there, and you want to jump in on the conversation because this is going to be a good one. To my left, we have my good friend, the great Dadakuji.
How you guys doing?
I think they're doing well. We're doing well, so it's all good. And to my right, the infamous, the never duplicated, always imitated Mike Bison.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Oh, man, a few words. So we're going to jump right in on it. Fighting games. The genre has been around for a very long time, ever since you could get two stick fighters, stick figures together going at it. You had Karate Champ was one of the originators of the fighting game genre. And, we've had some other little stumbles, here and there along the way. But obviously back in the 90s, early 90s, you had Street Fighter II.
The game.
The World Warrior, as it was originally, I guess, subtitled, and then it's had its many iterations. What was it about Street Fighter II that just kind of just made it like that game for you guys?
My first memory of seeing it, I think, was at a drive-in, and just seeing the two people fight against each other and the way it moved and the way, I think it was Blanca versus Guile, if I remember correctly, and just the way, Guile threw out his sonic booms and the way Blanca shot his rolling, whatever the name of the move was.
Cannonballs.
His cannonball across.
Attack, yeah.
I was just like, I was in awe, like, wow, that's awesome. And then I looked at it and thought, man, that would be pretty easy. Like, I want to play. It looks like it'd be really easy to play, like, just to beat the crap out of somebody. Who knew how technical the game actually would have been? I mean, it was, or is, I should say, rather.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not by any means. When you're, 11-year-old kid and you first time seeing friggin', Street Fighter. But as you go, you find out the technicality of the game. You start having more fun in the competition with your friends, and just, I think that for me is Street Fighter started completely all that stuff. Street Fighter 2, rather, not just Street Fighter, because I played the first two.
Yeah,
that one
was pretty rough.
Oh gosh,
that was pretty rough. But I mean, we're gonna take it over to Mike Bison. I mean, because of course your namesake comes from the boss character, or if you're looking at the Japanese version, the boxer of the game. I mean, what was it about Street Fighter 2 that kind of drew you into it?
Yeah, it's funny. It was the same thing for me. It was Guile. Like, I'll never forget it, man. It was a big crowd around the machine, and I was making my way through. And then I think it was like Guile versus Chun-Li, and I've never really seen anything like that. I think the closest thing I saw to it was like a Final Fight. Was that around?
Yeah, that was a little bit earlier.
Yeah. And it was the graphics on it. I was just in awe. I was just in total shock. Like, man, this is like one of the sweetest games I've ever seen.
Now, it's cool that you mentioned Final Fight, because Final Fight actually originally at Capcom was being developed as the successor to Street Fighter. It originally was going to be it was going to be called Street Fighter 2 essentially, and unfortunately they went a different way with it, and some of the Final Fight characters have made their way into the Street Fighter universe, which is cool, but I couldn't imagine Final Fight being Street Fighter 2 when we never get the great fighting game that we've all loved and played as throughout the years. Now, let's go forward a year to Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is the one that just kind of flipped it all on its head. It was like, okay, you got your little back and forth. Let's bring the violence into it.
Yep, that's what it was too. It was the violence. Same thing. First time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they actually made this game. You saw a couple of violent games like on Genesis and whatnot, and it was just that little bit of violence, and we looked at that like, oh man, that's terrible. But then we saw that blood and guts and gore and all that blood splattering everywhere. You never seen anything like that before, and like everyone just gravitated right to it. I know I did.
Oh yeah,
Fatalities and everything.
I remember where I first saw that too, and seeing Sub-Zero rip off an opponent's head the first time. I was just like, my mouth dropped, and I was just, oh my gosh, I was like so intrigued, but so kind of like, it's like I want to play it, but I don't want to play it because like, it's just like, but then I'll go ahead and play it, and just wow, it's been amazing ever since. So
okay, all right, so the violence kind of brought you in. Now for me, what I loved about Street Fighter was kind of the combo system, the whole chess match of if I get this attack off, you might not get another chance to hit me for at least a good, 50% of your energy bar. Killer Instinct was another one that kind of brought that on. It was like Killer Instinct, you make one mistake, 45 hit combo, and you might be out of there.
Oh yeah, and Killer Instinct was one of those other games too that if you attacked and you knew what you were doing in Street Fighter, and picking up Killer Instinct was not that hard, but it was just a slightly different combo system.
Right.
That once you got into it, it was just one of those things like you sit back and watch like, wow, that guy's really good because he's pulling off ultra combos and beating the crap out of people. But I mean, every single one of those fighting games, I can remember like the first time I saw them. So like,
well, I think one of the things about Killer Instinct that I liked is Killer Instinct kind of introduced the linking system. Because Street Fighter, as we all know, combos were a glitch. They originally weren't supposed to be in the game, but it was a glitch that they were like, this just kind of works. Let's keep it going. And then Killer Instinct kind of expanded on that with that linker system. Medium leads into hard, or light beats, a lot of that sort of thing. So when it came back to Street Fighter Alpha, they developed the linking system. And so it's almost like everybody started borrowing from everybody else. And then I remember there was one game that came out from Data East called Fighter's Destiny. And that game was kind of one of those off-the-wall Street Fighter clones, but it still has some interesting things in it. And one of the characters actually had his hurricane kick style. You had to continuously do the motion for it, which is something that they integrated into Street Fighter EX. So there was a lot of borrowing going back and forth. Now, obviously, games nowadays, you got Street Fighter 4, you've got the new Killer Instinct that's come out, you've got Injustice, Gods Among Us, I love that game, actually. That's a really good, finally a good DC fighting game. But why do you guys think that, the fighting games had such a huge surge back in the 90s when we were all coming up, and then now you look at Call of Duty and Battlefield, that's all you see is first-person shooters everywhere?
Well, I think, for the most part for me, in the 90s, arcades were huge. You had the 80s kind of fell apart, but towards the late 80s and in the 90s, arcades started to blow up. They were quarter crunchers because, like, if one person's on there, though, they stayed there. Next person had to put in a quarter if you want to challenge that person.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't say they're easy to make, but if you think about it, you don't really have to do much of level design. You just have to come up with characters, make the characters look interesting, make the combo system look interesting, and fight them against each other. Whereas, like, say a first-person shooter or a platformer, you really have to design how a level's going to be and how all this, stuff is going to interact with each other. So I think for that aspect, it was easy to crank them out because there were a lot of fighting games during the 90s. I mean, the ones we talked about were the popular ones, but then they were just, you had your Virtua Fighters coming out, and then you had its rival, the Tekkens, the ones that were coming out, and you had the crappy wannabe Mortal Kombat and Primal Rage. You had
there were a lot
of them.
I was gonna say, once the popularity of the arcade started to die down because of the home consoles, then a lot more American developers stepped in. They weren't really cranking out the fighting games like that, because for whatever reason, Americans, they kind of more so gravitated towards the first-person shooters and all that. The fighting games and all that, they're still popular in like Japan, but like over here, they just not. People kind of went more towards the the online gaming and stuff like that. And no one has really come out with anything new.
Right. And I think, and we're unfortunately running a little bit low on time, but one of the things that bugs me about fighting games, especially online, and you guys know I'm a very big opponent of the online play, is I despise lag of any sort. So I figure if I'm going to drop a combo, it better be because I missed the button, not because the internet connection is all of a sudden dropped me for like a frame or two, and then boom, the other guy gets a chance to win.
Well, that's one of the downfalls of internet gaming. Not all the situations are like that, because I've played fighting games online and not really had too much of trouble, but it also depends on who you're playing with. So like, my internet connection could be fabulous. The other person's maybe really far away or not just up to par. Yeah. So that could hurt it. But for the most part, it's not that bad. It kind of brings back the feeling of being in the arcade, except for you don't have somebody next to you and you don't have a crowd of people around you, and I think that was the hypeness. Was just the crowds that.
Yeah, that's definitely. The crowd does get you hyped. Now, real quick, last words each. 10 seconds. What do you think would be something that could bring fighting games back?
they'd have to do something that integrates a first player thing like Mortal Kombat. The Mortal Kombat 9, as they call it, that came out, the single player experience was fantastic. And I think they need to put more of that into video games or fighting games to get people to, come back to them.
All right, Mike Bison.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Mortal Kombat, same thing. Like, I'm really looking forward to Mortal Kombat 10. It's a lot of new developments with that, a lot of new characters. The characters that they're showing now are very interesting, and hopefully, they add a little bit more to the online experience, which I think is going to make a big difference. So yeah, hopefully, Mortal Kombat will make a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely. All right, there you have it. You have been watching Game, brought to you by Culture Junkies. Make sure you jump in on the conversation. The information is right there in the bar below. Tweet us. Hit us up with the hashtag Culture Junkies. Let us know what fighting games that you would like to see either make a return or what you would like to see in the fighting game genre to kind of bring it back to its dominance that it once had. I'm your host, GQ, for Mike Bison and the great Daidakuji. Game over.
I'm not trying to see Martin Scorsese's Mortal Kombat.
It cannot be.
Oh, but it can.
And it is glorious!